Hello, my friends. Today I want to start with some really good news. Trump put Putin in his place. He said that yesterday he had another phone call with Putin.
He actually offered to help mediate. I said, do me a favor. Mediate your own. Let's mediate Russia first, okay? I said, Vladimir, let's mediate Russia first. You can worry about this later. But I think that's going to work out too. But it's so many people have been killed. The big
Basically, Trump told Putin to stay out of it and deal with his own war, while the grown-ups will handle Iran. In short, Trump put Putin in his place, and that means we can expect more aggressive moves from Russia soon. By the way, last night more Shaheds were launched at Ukraine, but Putin keeps making excuses, claiming they started the war because of a coup in Ukraine.
Since 2014. But the problem isn't that Russia kind of annexed Crimea, the problem is that Western countries supported the coup in Ukraine.
Also, after Trump put Putin in his place during their phone call, Putin suddenly decided to announce that he is ready to negotiate with Zelensky.
We're ready to meet. In fact, I said I'm ready to meet with anyone, including Zelensky. But that's not the issue. If the Ukrainian state trusts someone to negotiate, by all means, let it be Zelensky. That's not the issue. The issue is who's going to sign the documents. Look, I didn't make this up. You can say whatever you want from a propaganda perspective, whatever you want about the legitimacy of the current authorities. But when it comes to serious decisions, what matters isn't propaganda, it's the legal side. The legal side, according to Ukraine's constitution, the president is elected for 5 years. There's no provision for extending the term, not even during martial law. It's clearly written, go read it. That only the rights of parliament, the Rada, are extended during martial law. Yes, it says that elections aren't held during wartime, that's true. But it does not say that the president's term is extended. It doesn't. That's it. And under Ukraine's constitutional structure, it's not a parliamentary or presidential republic, it's a presidential parliamentary one. What does that mean? It means that all branches of power are formed by the president, including ... Well, everyone thinks it's a democratic society. Maybe a country can be structured like that. But still, everyone is appointed by the president, all the military commanders, all the ministers, all the governors. There are no elections. But if the head of state is illegitimate, then the whole system becomes illegitimate. Why am I saying this? We don't care who leads the negotiations, even if it's the current head of the regime. I'm even willing to meet, but only if it's a final stage. Not to sit there endlessly negotiating, but to bring it to a close. We need to put a period on it. That period requires a signature from a legitimate authority. Otherwise, what happens? Someone new comes along and just throws everything in the trash. You can't do that. We're solving serious matters here. So, I'm not against negotiations, but a lot of work needs to be done first.
As you can see, he's making up this whole illegitimacy thing just to avoid negotiations. So, friends, let me know your thoughts in the comments. But if the constitution clearly says that elections can't be held during wartime, then Zelensky hasn't broken any laws. Elections will happen when the war ends. No one is disputing that. Again, share your opinion in the comments. I really want to hear what you think. Also, today, Trump delivered a strong response to Iran's supreme leader after his bold statement that they won't surrender.
say good luck.
And just like that, Trump made it clear Iran has no chance of winning. And honestly, that's obvious to everyone, but like Russia, Iran just doesn't seem to understand the obvious. Trump was also asked another very interesting question. Trump refused to answer whether the US would strike Iran. I can't say anything about it. Do you seriously think I'm going to answer that question? Are you going to hit Iran's nuclear sites? And what time exactly do you plan to do that? Sir, will you be launching strikes? Let us know so we can come watch. No one knows what I'll do. I might do it or I might not. What I can say is this: Iran is in serious trouble, and the Iranians do want to negotiate. I told them, why didn't you agree to negotiations earlier? So many lives lost, so much destruction. Why couldn't you come to the table 2 weeks ago? You could have made a deal. You could have saved your country. All in all, it wouldn't be a bad thing if similar days came for Russia too, if Trump provided Ukraine with all the weapons needed to strike every Russian military and nuclear facility and finally put them in their place. Unfortunately, he hasn't made any such announcements about Russia yet, so we wait. Meanwhile, Russia continues to advance its drone technologies. For the first time, a Shahed drone was found equipped with a camera, a direct radio control system from Russia, and an AI module, a military flash drive. This strike drone has been in development for a while, but this is the first time it's actually been used in the field. This signals that the further development of drone technologies will lead to even more precise strikes on Ukraine, meaning the situation on the ground is gradually getting worse. And now let's move on to the situation along the front line, starting with the Sumy direction. Here, the Russians continue the attacks, and there are reports suggesting they've made some minor gains. However, it's clear that the fighting is now focused on specific positions rather than on capturing settlements like before. They are no longer able to advance several kilometers in a single day. The front line in this area has remained unchanged for quite some time. In the Kharkiv direction, things remain quiet. The Russians aren't launching any new assaults, and the number of shelling is minimal. Meanwhile, in Vovchansk, Russian forces continue their attacks, and FPV drones are actively being used, but they haven't been able to advance any further, and the situation hasn't changed for the past 24 hours. In the Dvorichna direction, the Russians are assaulting Dovhenka and attempting a breakthrough near the village of Kamenka. They claim to have captured Dovhenka, but the Ukrainian side hasn't confirmed this information. According to the latest updates, fighting is still ongoing for control of the village. So we'll have to wait and see how the situation develops. The Russians haven't provided any video evidence to support their claims of capturing the village. In the Kupiansk direction, the Russians are pushing forward in the area of Stepovanovo-Selivka. However, activity there remains minimal and there have been no changes along the front line. In the Borova direction, things are currently quiet. The Russians are pulling in additional reserves and carrying out regrouping efforts. New assaults are likely in the near future. They clearly have no intention of stopping at their current positions. In the Liman direction, Russian activity remains very high. Russian forces are trying to expand their control in all directions and are storming the villages of Шандригулове, Зелена Долина, Новий Мир, Ольгівка, and Дружелюбівка. So far, there have been no changes over the past 24 hours, but offensive operations are extremely tense, and the likelihood of new breakthroughs is very high. In the Siversk direction, after capturing Grigorivka, the Russians are now storming Serebryanka and attempting to push through the Serebryanka forest toward the settlement of Yampil. However, over the past 24 hours, they haven't made any new gains, and the front line remains unchanged for now. In the Kramatorsk direction, assaults on the village of Markove continue. As before, the Ukrainian side are successfully repelling all attacks, and there have been no changes on the ground. In the Kostiantynivka direction, assaults on Protechene are ongoing. Russian forces are pushing toward Bila Hora, and battles are taking place near Kurdyumivka, Deliivka, and Sherbinivka. They are also attacking Alexandro Kalinove and Yablonivka and trying to break through to Stepanivka. Additionally, the assaults on Rusin Yar continue with an attempted push toward Poltavka. There is also heavy shelling across the region. However, no territorial changes occurred in the past 24 hours. The Ukrainian forces have successfully repelled all attacks. In the Pokrovsk direction, the Russians are storming the village of Shevchenko Pershe and attempting to advance near the village of Koptive. Fighting also continues in the area of Novoekonomichne with ongoing assaults on Myrolubivka, the village of Promень, Lysivka, Dachinske, and an attempted breakthrough toward Udachne. Despite the high level of Russian activity, the Ukrainian forces are managing to repel all attacks, and the front line remains stable. In the Novopavlivka direction, the Russians continue storming Muravka and are breaking through toward Novopavlivka. Heavy fighting is ongoing around Horihove, the outskirts of Oleksievka, and assaults on Zelený Kut, Zaporizhia, the village Kamar, and Myrne continue. So far, the front line here remains unchanged, but the situation is seriously worsening. Russian forces claim they have already reached the outskirts of Zaporizhia village. It's also possible that Kamar is now under their control. Although slow, the front line is moving forward here. Local fighters describe the situation as follows. In the Novopavlivka direction, the situation is steadily deteriorating. Fighting continues in Zaporizhia, but the trends are unfavorable. The same applies to Kamar and its surrounding area. The level of problems is increasing. In fact, battles for the important Yalta-Filia-Hrushivsk triangle have begun. Losing this triangle would allow the Russians to create a significant bridgehead in the Dnipro region and possibly Zaporizhia region as well, and launch attacks toward the Pokrovsk-Pavlograd highway. Naturally, this would bring no good to us, where the Russians would gain operational and tactical success and the ability to advance in three directions simultaneously toward Mezhova, the Zaporizhia region, and the Pavlograd-Pokrovsk highway. In the Velika Novosilka direction, the Russians are assaulting the villages of Shevchenko and Vilna-Pole, but as before, the situation remains unchanged and all attacks continue to be successfully repelled. In the Gulay-Pole direction, the Russians continue the assaults and shelling of the village of Malinivka, and the situation is getting worse day by day. However, so far, the Ukrainian forces have managed to repel all attacks. Despite some Russian breakthroughs into the village, they haven't been able to consolidate their positions there, and the front line remains unchanged for now. In the Zaporizhia direction, the Russians continue shelling but haven't launched any offensive actions. There have been no changes in the situation over the past 24 hours. In the Kherson direction, the Russians continue attempts to break through near the Antonivsky Bridge, but all Russian units are being pushed back, and so far there are no changes. Shelling continues at the usual intensity. Meanwhile, Trump keeps making statements about Iran, saying that a complete capitulation of Iran is needed.
He said I was going back home to make a ceasefire. Not a ceasefire. We're long beyond ceasefire. And I said, why do you say that? Why would you say ceasefire? It's a bad term to use because a ceasefire means like everything's going swimmingly. We'll take a little time off. It's not. We're not looking for a ceasefire. We're looking for a total, complete victory. Again, you know what the victory is. No nuclear weapon.
Mr. President,
So I thought it was a very badly worded statement by him, and obviously I let him know that.
Meanwhile, the fact that Russia is preparing for a large-scale war is also confirmed by the construction of new military bases. Russia is expanding military towns near the border with Finland, writes Ilem, citing satellite images. For example, in the Lubcha-Savina garrison, buildings have been erected just 110 kilometers from the Finnish border. In the Murmansk regional administration, they say a military town is being built for a new artillery brigade. The footage also shows changes at Russian military sites on the Karelian Isthmus. At the same time, Putin claims that Russia has no intention of attacking NATO countries.
The legend that Russia is going to attack Europe, NATO countries, that's the unbelievable lie they're trying to make the population of Western European countries believe. But it's nonsense, you understand? Even those who say it don't believe it themselves. Never. And you yourselves, probably. Is there even one of you who believes Russia is preparing to attack NATO? What is that? You know NATO countries currently spend $1.4 trillion on weapons. They'd be better off focusing on saving their own auto industry and raising wages.
And that line really hits hard. He forgot that the Russian auto industry has long been dead, and that attempts to revive it relied on cheap, outdated technology from the French company Renault. Now Russia just buys Chinese cars, sticks the Moskvich logo on them, and sells them as supposedly Russian cars, which, by the way, nobody buys. And apparently, Germany needs to focus on saving its auto industry. Overall, the circus continues. Friends, be sure to share your thoughts on this in the comments. And that's all from me. So please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on all this latest news. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye bye.